Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I am glad to be meeting with both of you. And so, Sean, know, I feel everything there may be to know about Lisa, but I know less of you, and I'm learning more about the lookalikes. But just dazzle me with your history and how you got started.
Uh, okay, well, my initial band was the Lookalikes. Um, we were very popular here in Dublin in the 80s. We signed a record deal, went off to London, did a few singles, started an album, came back to Dublin, and things just went sour with the record company.
Mm,
I won't get into all the story of that, but we ended up uh, changing labels. We got signed by Warner Brothers, um, finished the album here in Dublin. Um, After that, the most major thing that happened aside from us, we were playing constantly. We went off on tour with Thin Lizzy throughout Europe. We'd already done a tour earlier with them throughout Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. And shortly after the tour was finished, the band broke up.
mm,
So I formed another version of the band, and we played around Ireland here in the mid 80s. But the whole music scene was dying off. In fact, a lot of things were dying off in the mid 80s in Ireland. There was a mass exodus to the States.
mhm.
Um, People looking for jobs, the whole 9 years. The economy was going down, down, down. So I went over to New York a couple of times, um, checked out what the situation would be about getting gigs. We went over there and did 3 weeks worth of gigs around all the rock gigs in New York City.
Mhm.
Did that, very successful. So we decided we'd move. So in 1987, I went over in January and started putting things together over there, and then the band came over a couple of months later. And we stayed in New York then up until well, I had to come home because my mother was ill,
Ah,
um, and she needed somebody to look after her 24/7. So, as I say, up until then, I'd been playing in New York. I did quite a few session things, and then I got signed directly to the Hit Factory because they have their own record label.
mhm.
But the man who signed me, Eddie Germano, he's a very, very big player in the music business in New York and worldwide. But he died, unfortunately. So everything was up in the air after that. So I just continued playing live and doing sessions. I was doing a lot of sessions in Electric Lady Studios and
Mhm.
a place called Platinum Island, the Magic Bus. They're well-known studios, all very, very good studios, Um, and I produced a couple of albums for friends of mine, and played pretty much everything on them except the drums.
Mhm.
Um, and as I say, I had to come home. I didn't have really a choice about it because there was nobody else. My brother had started a business in Cyprus, and my sister had been living in Scotland. My older sister had been living in Scotland since she was 21, so she wasn't going to uproot and come home.
That's quite a transition to go, from playing and recording to being a carer.
Yes. And the unfortunate thing about being a carer was that um, my mother didn't understand a lot of it. So anything she was asked, like she was offered extra help,
Mhm.
but she said, "No, no, Shashank can do that." Now
Yeah.
she didn't mean to be burdening me with work, but
Certainly.
she didn't really want anybody else
Right.
looking after her.
Mm.
So yeah, it was a very, very big transition, and of course, my time out playing was very limited because of the fact that uh, I would have to get somebody to replace me if I went out to gig. Which
Sure.
I did gig here, and I got nieces or whoever, you
Mhm.
know, friends to sit with my mom and make sure that she didn't do anything foolish like go and eat because she was a diabetic and
Mhm.
uh, she was only a diabetic in the latter stages of her life, but uh, she had a habit of, you know, going out and getting something to eat,
Sure.
um, which would be fine if I was here to take a reading from her. But after the reading, I wasn't getting accurate readings. So
Sure.
everybody that came into the house was warned.
Mhm.
She had her dinner to not give her anything else to eat.
They can be very clever.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. Yeah. Well, and apart from that, my mom didn't realize that, she was screwing up the whole uh, keeping track of her diabetes stuff.
sure.
And as I say, she wasn't used to it either because of the fact that it was, I'll say, the last 2 or 3 years of her life that she became a diabetic.
To ask, but before you had to come back home, had you ever played in Washington, D.C.?
No, we never played in Washington, D.C. We played, the band used to travel quite a bit. We used to play regularly in Boston.
Hmm.
We used to play regularly in Florida. We played a few times in Philadelphia. We used to play in the summertime in Nantucket,
Okay.
um, and Cape Cod, all around those areas. And of course, uh, there were a lot of festivals like the Rockaway Festival. We used to play every summer, and a couple of times the Coney Island Festival used to be very big, and then it ceased to be altogether, and then they got it back up running again. So when they got that going, they asked us to play, and we played that a few times. And we played festivals in Florida quite a bit.
I was curious. I was a teenager in the 80s. Growing up in Baltimore and living in D.C. and Baltimore had a sizable Irish American community, and that kind of, yes, there was an influx of Irish musicians playing in DC and Baltimore, just people who were locally. And at that time, I feel like I almost knew more about Irish politics and what the economic circumstances were at the time because of the people, who
Yes,
were
yes.
who were around. Did you get to play at CBGB's?
Oh yeah. Actually, one of our biggest fans was Hilly Crystal. I don't mean that lightly. He's the guy who owns CBGB's.
Mhm.
Um, he actually set up a showcase for us, which I didn't actually want him to do, but he did it.
Mhm.
And we weren't really prepared for it because it was in one of our early visits to New York. We didn't even have our own backline or anything with us.
Yeah.
Um, but he sent out all these invites to the record labels. And uh, as I say, we weren't properly prepared for it at all. If we were, we would have been signed. And there was a very famous lawyer in New York, a guy called Owen Epstein.
Mm.
Um, and Owen Epstein was probably one of the few people who could actually get a band signed without the label even seeing them. He was that powerful, right? And he came up to me after we played and he said, "Why did you play so long?" And I said, "Well, we just played a normal gig." I said, and he said to me, "If you'd stopped playing after 20 minutes, this is exactly his words. He said, if you'd stop playing after 20 minutes, he said, there would be a line of A&R people waiting to sign you.
Wow.
And we didn't know, like, basically, the showcases are 20 to 25 minutes. We
Mhm.
played for about an hour and a quarter,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know, thinking the more we show them of our material,
Mhm.
the more they're going to get into it. But it's an interesting thing because I discovered later on, and I've actually spoken to Lisa about this. If you go, we'll just say you, Kerry, go to see your favorite act in the world, your favorite act, and it's nice concert situation. You can see everything, the whole 9 yards. The actual maximum time that you will be concentrated fully on the band out
Mhm.
of, say, a 2 hour to 2.25 hour concert is 20 minutes.
Mm.
Because you get distracted, people move, or something happens, or a
Someone
light
gets
comes
on
on
your
over there, or you
Somebody
just
spills
and you
a
stop
drink.
listening.
right.
So, and
Yeah.
that's actually a genuine scientific distinction that they made, like because they studied it.
That's so, and I understand it, because of course, not that I've done full on internet stalking, but also I have a friend here who is from Carrow. And so, learning a little bit more about, your projects. And so, yes, there's a lot of excitement about you. There's a lot of excitement about Thin Lizzy. And so now that you're recording, you have your own work and the work that you're doing with Boy Blue. How are those separate? I understand that there's sometimes some confusion amongst.
Yeah, well, I think the confusion that's happening is online, um, as in um, the first Boy Blue release, Lisa was singing. The second one I was singing, and the fact that friends of mine knew that I had been working on an album, assumed that that song was from an album as opposed to a Boy Blue song. But they're definitely two separate entities. Like my album will probably be, I'll probably have a couple of singles out in April
Okay,
and
I want
release
to ask about that because I know you've
release
got a project.
the actual album in May,
Okay.
because at that stage, I'm hoping that I'll be back working. See, the reason why we're not doing so much with the Boy Blue thing at the moment is because the lockdown in Ireland, you can't travel more than 5 kilometers from your home. So I can't actually get into the studio.
Okay.
So that's
Frustrating, very frustrating.
we just have to wait. It's very frustrating for both myself and Lisa, because
Yes,
new songs written, etc.
but
But as I
I
say,
know
They're lining up.
I know that it's frustrating for her. I've heard a little bit about that. So, well then, Lisa, so the same thing, kind of prior to Boy Blue, you'd been releasing some singles. So, what's happening with that piece of your work?
Well, the singles that you're talking about were really demos for schoolwork, like school
Mhm.
assignments.
Mhm.
And I put them up. People started liking some of them. And those same singles are going to also be on Boy Blue. There's like 2 or 3 of them that Sean's going to develop a little bit better, because like I think you remember Misty Blue was just I put a guitar part down, very simple guitar part, and even some slide and some keyboard. There was no drums, there was nothing. And so I handed that to Sean and say, do something with this magical, and he did. So that's kind of how we've been writing too. Like I'll come up with a basic guitar idea, I'll put a drum track and some keys to it and hand it to him with with vocals.
Right.
He
And I
develops it from there.
I want to ask you more about the process between the two of you, but really quickly, Misty Blue, tell us a bit about just the concept or the idea, behind that song?
Okay. Basically, initially, Lisa had been looking for somebody to play guitar,
Mm.
and I was recommended to her by a few people. I don't
One of them being Dave, my brother-in-law. That's
Okay.
kind of where that started, actually, because Dave and
Right.
Sean are very good friends from
Okay.
30 years ago.
So Lisa contacted me, asked me would I play guitar on it. And I listened to the stuff and I said, like, this could be developed if you don't mind me playing around with it. And she said, no, like, go ahead and do it.
I hear you're
Sure.
brutal. You're brutal.
Y-
You're a perfectionist. You're brutal.
Yes. So
But
To
I
good
told
effect.
him to be. I told him to be. I
But,
asked
but
for
to
it.
good to good effect. So
I changed the music around and added a couple of musical sections to it, and got Lisa to change some of the phrasing and some of the melody to what she had originally given me. And like the end product, I think, well, we were both happy with it, and I think that's probably the most important thing to us about the music is that we actually like it. Yes, it would be very nice to have commercial success with it, but I don't think either of us would be particularly happy if we had commercial success with something that we didn't like ourselves, So we want to try and preserve, I suppose, for want of a better description, musical integrity, if that's the correct phrase. We want to do it our way, as opposed to what's fashionable or flavor of the month or whatever.
Right.
We just we like similar types of music. We know what each other like. And Lisa will hear something in a guitar solo and says, "You have to keep that, we need that for
which
the
is a
record."
lot. I do that a lot, actually.
well, and Lisa, I don't even know if I told you this, but I was playing it for Ron, my husband, who is a graduate of Berklee
Stand-up
College of
bass.
Music.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bass.
musician. Doesn't like anything. He liked it. He's like,
Really, yeah.
yes. So
Yeah, Ron's a hard ass. I was going to ask you if you played,
is.
but I was scared to ask you if you played it for him because I
No,
knew
I
he was a hard ass.
did, and he liked it. So
Yeah, so that's kind of like a very important thing. And Misty Blue was written about that, basically, all the people we've lost. And I tried to put it's also kind of, not kind of, but it was also written, if you listen to the lyrics, from the perspective of somebody who is dying themselves. And like that's how the song starts off, as I drift slowly through the clouds. So basically they're leaving Earth, and a lot of the imagery in the video, there's one point where you see them leaving Earth during, like, both videos were very carefully edited to fit the song properly. So and that's just basically what it is. It's just, and a lot of people are relating to it because they've, especially now, we're losing a lot of people. So
yeah. So
fitting.
So then, what's next for you?
Well, as I say, we've been working together, writing, like in similar fashion.
In between football matches?
Like
Yes, in between soccer matches.
Lisa sends me ideas and says, I don't know where to go musically with, say, a middle eight or a chorus section for this or whatever it might be, and I take the idea and piece the music together. I just made the changes and I made the suggestions to Lisa, and she sang it the way I thought it should be sung, and she did a great job on the vocals, and like lots of people that comment about the song comment about the vocals. They say that, like, you'll see things on YouTube and on the Facebook page, and great vocals, you know. But there hasn't been anything bad said about it, you know.
That's good.
So it's nice that it's I know personally that it has touched certain people in certain ways, you know. And it doesn't matter to me with a song if it touches people in the way that you wrote it, or if it touches people in the way that they themselves interpret it. You know, music is like that, and to me, it's not like, oh, but that's not what the song is about at all. Like, as long as it gets to people, and they can take their own little meaning out of it, or their own little bit of passion out of it, to me, especially as a songwriter, if you can, there's three different things to me that are important about writing songs. If you can reach into somebody's mind, if you can reach into somebody's heart, or you can reach into somebody's soul with what you're basically doing with words and notes, then your work is done if you can achieve even one of those three things, you know.
About to release another single before I forget to say that.
Okay. Yes, that's, please.
It was on your list, I bet. So yeah, we're about to release another one any day now. We're just not exactly sure. It's being finalized and processed. So
Awesome.
Soon, and it's a cover, and it's just so that we can keep working and putting out music. You know what I mean? So, but
it's a pretty obscure cover, to be honest. You know, like, it's not something that you would have heard on the radio every day or anything like that. You know.
No. Do you know the singer Birdie? Have you ever heard of Birdie?
I don't know that I have.
No, so there you go. It's a cover by her. She's a young girl. Well, she's probably in her early mid-20s now, but when she started, she was in her teens, I think.
Okay.
But,
well, then we'll all have something to look forward to.
Yeah. And luckily, the songs now that we have out now, both songs are equally getting a large amount of radio play in several different countries. So internet and FM.
So yeah. Well, thank you both for being so generous with your time.
Well, thank you for interviewing us. You know, I knew all the answers, so I didn't want to have to talk to myself. So
that would be weird.
Yeah.
That'd just be weird.